Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a place where self-care is part of your day, a space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter, turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare of suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness, and my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The courting and courting happens about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You will learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 12. Today we're going to talk about commitment. You know, in my intro that you just heard, by the way, I say the courting or the K in courting of happiness is really a true courtship to happiness. And when I speak to groups or when I'm facilitating a training session, I always talk about the importance of, that commitment, that courtship. When we discuss commitment, we often talk about relationships, but I always love to share it in terms of not only that aspect, but also in terms of the commitment that we have to oneself, ourself, yourself, right? Oneself. One of my favorite transformational speakers and trainers is Jack Canfield. In an article, he talks about the 5 habits of successful people. I want to discuss them with you. Well, number 1 is successful people believe in themselves. This, of course, we all know is so important, right? That belief in oneself is really important. The value of believing in yourself. And Jack also shares that it is a choice, right? That, believing in oneself, it is a choice, and choose you. One of my favorite coaches is Amy Porterfield. And a few weeks ago, maybe it could be a few months ago, Amy posted a picture. And I remember it saying something like, "I always bet on myself," or it was she had a statement talking about betting on herself. And it's so important that we bet on ourselves. And she's just exemplary. And these individuals I talk about and share in this podcast are people that I greatly admire, are people that, I value what they share. I value their information as coaches, teachers, trainers, but then also value what they give to the world, right? And boy, I'm so grateful that they truly believed in themselves, right? Because of that, we're able to actually witness and really benefit from so many of their gifts. So that was number 1, right? Successful people believe in themselves. Number 2 is they set goals. He talks about that successful people set high goals that are realistic and measurable. They make an effort really to work towards those goals daily. So every day they're taking it, step by step. As my dad always reminds me, taking it bite by bite, one step at a time, in terms of always being able to take on, that challenge, just take it on bite by bite, step by step. So number 3 is he mentions that in terms of, again, we're talking about Jack Canfield's article, The 5 Habits of Successful People. Number 3 is he says they go the extra mile. The extra mile. I love that Jack shares that those people who go the extra mile aren't thinking what's in it for me. He calls it the what's in it for me policy. I kind of like that. What's in it for me policy. He goes, no, they don't focus in on what's in it for me, but they're focusing in on exceeding expectations, helping their customers, helping their neighbors, helping the people around them, helping their teams, serving them, right? So I love that he said that in terms of going the extra mile. Number four is they take action. They take action. Almost had to look at number four again because, I mean, they take action. Action is so vital, so important because really taking action is key. It's truly key. Jack shares that successful people have a vision, set goals, they break them down into small steps, and they even visualize it. So, what I love so much about taking action, right, it's more than just, I want to do this or I'm going to do this. It's taking action. But then another thing that speaks so well to this dynamic, because when we have goals and they can be big goals and big goals that may scare us, right? But then when we look at them, and I love what Jack Canfield says. He says, breaking them down into small pieces, just like my father shared. My father is a retired educator and entrepreneur. He's also an incredible trainer and businessman. And and I love that I'm seeing the pattern, right? And I'm seeing so many things kind of replicated here with what successful people do and the advice successful people give by repeating my father, William Alston Sr., and then Jack Canfield, taking action. Number five is they practice appreciation. So let's talk about that a little bit. He shares that successful people know that what really they know really what's important in terms of really showing appreciation for the people in their lives. Immediately when I saw that, I thought about gratitude, right? It's about being grateful for the people in your life, or being grateful when um you are sharing the value of people in your lives and what they've done for you. Like today, I sent an email out to a member of my team at my university, and I ended it with gratitude and told her how appreciative I was for her continuous support, wished her a very happy holiday. And of course, she sends me an email back and she goes, "Thank you so much, happy holiday." But I just loved being able to share that with her, recognize her, and then ending it with gratitude. So I love what Jack shares in terms of uh, what successful people do, what they understand. And what I love is that we often talk about the importance of this, in terms of successful people. But what I love is that we've talked about this generally, right, within so many different episodes of our podcast, right, of this podcast. And we've talked about them as it relates to positive relationships. I often call my friends my self care squad. Matter of fact, you know, I talk about this often during speaking engagements, the importance of having a self care squad. But my self care squad, these are individuals where we cheer each other on, we support each other, we're highly empathetic. By the way, my friends also are the best accountability partners on the planet. They are the best on the planet. I want you to think about, what are your positive relationships? Who are the people in your life who support you? And better yet, that reciprocal dynamic. Notice when I talked about my self care squad, I didn't just say me, 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 or what they do for me, me, me. It's what we do for each other. It's this beauty in terms of this reciprocity and how we are there for each other. We support each other. Think about the people who are committed to you and your well being. Who are they? Like I just shared, my self care squad members are extraordinary. They're the people that will send me a text, that will call me, that I will call them. I will check in on them. I might surprise them with a gratitude text, clearly out the blue, talk about how much I appreciate their love and friendship. I might create a graphic for them and surprise them with it. They might do the same thing for me. You know, they may also, surprise me. Two members of my self care squad decided um, to fly in from one is in California, the other one is in DC. And before the world changed as it relates to the pandemic, they flew in literally a week before, like all of our worlds changed, right, in terms of the pandemic, especially I'm talking about here in the United States, and particularly at that time frame. And it was in like early to mid March, early March actually. And I was so grateful. And they flew in, by the way, I'm sorry, they flew in, by the way, because my dad threw me a birthday party, and he invited many of my friends and family members in and around the area. But they surprised me because I was just like, oh my gosh, these weren't friends that were in the area. These were friends that were, one is on one side of the country, the other is on the other side. And it was a wonderful gift that we still talk about to this day. Sometimes when we're sitting here dealing with the stresses of the pandemic, we often think about that time and we look back on it fondly. So think about that. Who are the members of your self care squad? Who are those people that you all are there for each other, right? And that you are thinking about really the well being of each other. And what I also love about my self care squad is that we do it without any judgment. And one of the things that I also love about us is that we ask the question, what can I do to support you? How can I be there for you? What can I do? What do you need from me right now? I love that we pose that question with one another. So think about that. Think about who makes up your self-care squad, and also think about really um what that looks like, right? In terms of, if you already have your self care squad, say, hey, Dr. Kortni, I have my self care squad, and I'm gonna tell you, they're like yours. They're incredible people, amazing human beings. And some of you may be listening and saying, you know what? I don't know if I really have a self care squad. Like I have some friends, and sometimes we check in, maybe not as regularly, but maybe it'd be great to like organize us and talk about this whole self-care squad and see what they say. Because when I've shared this during speaking engagements, it's been interesting to see the reaction when some individuals say, wow, I never thought about creating a self-care squad, or talking to my friends about being a part of, hey, let's be each other's self-care squad. It's wonderful, when you can see and understand, and also be able to value elements that you feel that you can bring in that may speak to you. And I've noticed when I share that during public appearances, how people respond to that, and the reaction as it relates to that. And I will tell you another thing that I love about my self care squad is that, and I probably shared this before, but I love that even though we can be, states away from one another or in another location, other part of the world, we are able to get closer to each other through having these virtual meetings. So we'll have a video conference, or we would leverage Google Hangout quite a bit. But think about what that looks like. What does it mean? And discuss it. and like I said, we do these Google Hangouts. We have one of them, we have a 24-hour text support dynamic where you can text at any time of the night. It's okay if people are sleeping, but you might want to get it off your chest. And and when the person either wakes up from, or it might be in the middle of something, it can focus on the text. They do, and they respond, but it's with no judgment. It's like, oh, what do you mean you sent me a text at 3 a.m.? It's like, hey, by the way, thank you for sending me that text at 3 a.m. How are you? Are you okay? It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So again, begin to think about your self-care squad and what it looks like. And also the key habits that speak to commitment. Um, so I say that because at the end of the article, he talks about writing things down. Um, that in terms of those habits that we discussed earlier, prior to me talking about the self care squad, but talking about the value of the five elements that Jack Canfield discusses in the article. In terms of number one, successful people believe in themselves. Number two, they set goals. Number three, they go the extra mile. Number four, they take action. And number five, they practice appreciation. And he shares, think about what you could incorporate in your life. What will you include in your life? I will say this as it speaks to your well being, all of them are beneficial, right? But the ones that stand out are setting goals and taking action. I think those are so important, right? It's setting the goals, writing them down, developing your strategy, and taking action. I love that he also made them bite sized pieces and talking about how to tackle them. Because what can happen is that when we think about the big goal, right? The big goal could intimidate us. But when we take it and look at them and start to dissect and say, oh, wow, well, this is the big goal, but this is one action item. Here's the other action item. Here's a third one. So we start breaking it down and understanding how we're going to achieve it, how we're going to really achieve that goal. So Michael Hyatt is the creator of the Full Focus Planner. He also is the author of several books. But in terms of what I want to share in terms of this podcast is the Full Focus Planner. I live by it. Matter of fact, my Full Focus Planner is right next to me as I'm doing this podcast. I use it to help me literally remain focused. That's why I love the title, Full Focus Planner. It certainly delivers as it relates to that. And as I was going through the internet, and one day I found this quote um, that someone posted about Michael Hyatt, and the quote said, "Our choices become our actions become our habits become our character." Michael Hyatt, and I was like, wow. Michael Hyatt is this constant teacher in my life as it relates to watching his videos on YouTube, living by the Full Focus Planner, meaning checking in daily with my Full Focus Planner, having the planner, using it, writing down goals are important, right? I want you to begin thinking about what your goals are. That's one thing the Full Focus Planner has been able to help me do. But I want you to begin think about, what that looks like for you. I want you to ask yourself really questions what in terms of what are your goals concerning your well-being? What have you learned thus far listening to this podcast and listening to past podcast episodes that may have transformed your life? What can you add to your well-being strategy? At the start of this podcast, meaning when I started launching the podcast, probably around my first one or two episodes, I talked about the why of the Courting Happiness podcast. And then I also talked about what can really help um, an individual as they're kind of listening to the podcast and what you should have with you. And one of the things I encouraged listeners to get is find a notebook that speaks to you. Notice I didn't say just find a notebook. Um, I said find a notebook that speaks to you, one that you love. It could be in that cute binder, could be, something that you found at Target and that's like, wow, that's a really cute notebook. It can be something that you is your favorite color and you seem to have a pull towards it, like, wow, I love this book. I wouldn't mind including my strategies in this book. Whatever it can be, right? I'm clearly talking about what speaks to me, what has worked with me, and what I've also witnessed it working for others. But for me, I live by that. For me, when I'm starting a journey, I live by putting it in a book that speaks to me. So a good example would be is when I was visiting my home in Georgia, my family home in Georgia. I headed to my bedroom in my parents' home, and I found this binder. So I have I have a lot of belongings at my parents' home, and my as I mentioned in previous episodes, my mother passed away about 4 years ago, so my dad is there. And when I'm visiting, and I'm looking forward to Christmas, being able to practice a lot of social distancing, but at least being able to be in the same space together. But when last time I was there, yeah, yeah, well, some time ago, must have been that party that I just told you guys about, where all my friends flew in. My friends from my self care squad flew in from different parts of the country. I believe it was then. Yeah, I haven't been home since March. I haven't been home, my family home since March. But when I was there, I found this binder, and I hadn't seen the binder in years. And it was a binder that I made years ago when I was applying for to PhD programs. Applying to programs, I had this binder, everything organized, had a table of contents, had dividers, I had everything in that binder. It had my deadlines and goals, and I even research. There's even research from some of my favorite scholars in that binder from the different schools that I was applying for, and their research and some of their scientific journal articles, all in that binder. And I remember looking through. But what's so interesting about that binder is that the key is that the fact that I was that my goal of getting my PhD didn't just sit in my head. It was something that I began to take action, right? I get the binder. I start writing down goals. I start doing research. I start doing these bite-sized steps, right? I start finding out about the colleges and departments. I start finding out about the faculty, start finding out more about their research. Then I begin studying and preparing for whatever standardized test needed for that time. I start thinking about all the action steps and then taking them, taking action. So I wrote down those goals. I looked at the action steps. I created them, but I took action. So I also began to think about who could help me. Who could help me? So when I applied to PhD programs, I thought, maybe who I could hire to help me. Do I need a coach? Do I need a tutor? Do I need to hire a consultant? Right? Do I need a tutor to help me with the standardized test portion? Do I need a coach to help me, with some of the organization and so forth? So do I need a consultant as it relates to, I guess, kind of serving as a coach in a way with the application process and working with me, as I continue to build on strategy. right? So that is then not simply looking at the goal as, oh gosh, I have to do all of these things. But yes, you do. But then it's also looking at these bite sized pieces and saying, okay, I can do that. I can do that. I think I might need a little help here with this. I might need to help shorten my learning curve with that. Maybe I might have a coach for this. And I'm just making it a generalization opposed to just looking at the PhD program or when I was applying to programs in general, right? It's thinking about all that you need and making sure that you're giving yourself all that you need to. Because the help, like when I think back on some of the tutoring sessions, and I love that I had that experience and that I hired a consultant through the organization that helped me with organizing my applications, and that person gave me an idea what admissions looks like and so forth, and what I need to think about when constructing an application for a PhD program that might differ from other programs like undergrad and so forth. But when I did that, you know, that was so empowering. And then when I look back on it, I go, wow, I enjoyed some of the relationships I made with certain people back then, and the information that I learned from them. And so now I pass this experience on to others, and helping other people get into and begin their journey in terms of acquiring or obtaining their PhD. So I love that I had that experience, and I love that I broke it down that way. And I loved that I really researched it well. One thing I always tell students is always value being a student in regards to your craft. So, whatever you love, learning more and understanding, you know, so many different elements of it. And I say that because that can speak to any goal in life, but in particularly as it relates to well-being, is certainly a value in terms of thinking about what is my goal as it relates to my well-being. Boy, Dr. Courtney talked about uh Dr. Courtney talked about positive relationships and self-care squad. I tell you, I think I'm going to spend some time this weekend writing a list of members of my self-care squad. There's all these other elements that I want to do. Ooh, I want to focus in on positive activities, right? If that's one of yours, and you can say to yourself, if I want to positive focus on positive activities, and I've been thinking about yoga, wow, I think I need to hire someone. Maybe I'm gonna go and invest in a yoga class. Wow, there's a lot of great virtual ones now. I think I'm gonna do that. Whatever that looks like, but notice it's looking at the goal and breaking it down, and then developing that plan and taking action. Taking action is so very important. So, really begin to think about who makes up your team. Also, how will you reward yourself on those wins? How do you show your appreciation to your team? And also think about, what does your well-being journey look like? Who do you need to help you? So Michael Hyatt's planner, the Full Focus Planner, um, allows you to look at like the big three. Like, what are your big three goals today? And I love that because it begins to allow me to look at my to-do list because I have another notebook that's titled, follow your dreams. And in it, it literally has every single item or different goals that I have in mind. And then I take those entries and I put it in my Full Focus Planner. But as I speak with you, and I think about how I leverage the Full Focus Planner, I want you to think about What are your big three goals? What are big three goals that you have in well-being, right? Opposed to thinking, what are all your goals? Because that can be overwhelming, right? But if you think of what are your big three? What are those big three goals that you have? Are your goals more personal? Are you looking at what you do more at home to help increase your well-being? Are you thinking about work? Do you need to create more boundaries at work or in your personal life? Do you need to work on well being at work? Right? All of these questions are important. I also see it as very meaningful, especially at this time of the year, because Christmas is coming soon. But not too far away from Christmas is New Year's. And you know what that means? Is that time when we start to take inventory as it relates to our life and we set goals. But this is the beauty. This is the beauty of where you are right now in terms of listening to this podcast and your commitment to courting happiness is that you didn't have to wait. You've already started your courting happiness journey, well-being journey has begun with the investment that you make every time you listen to this podcast, the investment that you make every time you take action on the things you've learned, and the investment that you make every time you look back and you've met those goals, right? So you're already positioning yourself, just like Jack Canfield says. You're working on, your goals. What daily? Right? He said every day, right? Daily. First rule: write it down. Commit. Be intentional. Take action. And by the way, I hope you share it with us in our private Facebook group at the Courting Happiness Community Facebook group. We hope to see you there. Guys, this is the end of our episode, but just the beginning as it relates to your journey. Let's continue this conversation online. Join the Courting Happiness podcast community in Facebook. Don't forget, it's Courting with a K. Our private Facebook community is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Are you ready to spread happiness? Subscribe and share this podcast with family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday, and congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.